Hey guys, it's Patrick. Welcome back. I am so excited about today. It's going to be a lot of fun going over how to set up your video, how to set up your lights, what you should and shouldn't do. First, I'm going to go over some tips that I have for things that I've learned over the years of filming. You want to make sure that the subject is sitting up straight. You don't want to have things for them to play with. So if they have water, you don't want them holding the water. If they have notes, you don't want them holding the notes because they will play with those. Even if it's on their lap, they'll crinkle it and not realize that they are. And then later you have crinkling paper. It's not a good thing. You also want to try to make sure that they're in a stable chair. So many chairs like this one that I have can spin around, and when somebody's talking about the content that's going in the video, hopefully they're really invested in that, and then they're not thinking about what their body's doing. I may have done this throughout. Unfortunately, this is the only chair I have. So you want to make sure that they have a stable chair, that it's a chair that will help them sit up straight, because you don't want people, like I said before, sitting back like this. That's not a good look for your video. Up straight, not moving, not messing with things. If you learned one thing from this mini course, I hope that you take away that you shouldn't use scripts and that you shouldn't try to be funny. If you use a script or you try to memorize what you're going to say, you are going to come off not like a person. Unless that is your job, unless you're a news anchor or an actor, trying to read a script and sound natural, it's not going to happen. That's why I like to do the interview type of style. Is you get a more natural reaction because you're talking with somebody else. If you're going to do something like this where you're talking to the camera, you're probably going to edit in the type of way that I am that's very jerky, which is okay when it's this kind of personal conversation. And then you might have notes. I have notes to the side so I can look at those notes. I didn't put those notes in front of me because if those notes are there, even if I'm not trying to or I don't need to look at them, I'm going to look at them. So you definitely, if you need bullet points or you need printed out notes, have those in a place that you can't see, you can't mess with, because you will look at them. And I can't stress enough not to try to be funny. There's nothing more painful than watching somebody who's clearly trying to be funny and failing at it. It's such an awkward feeling, and it's not going to connect somebody to you. It's not going to make somebody want to work with you or buy your product or service. Keep your videos as short as possible. This is going to depend on the type of video. So something like this where it's informational, people are specifically coming for this video so that they can learn something. Those videos can be 2 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours long if you want them to, because people want all of that information. But if you're making a video that is about your company or about your product or service, the shorter the better. Really under a minute if you could, that's fantastic. Under 2 minutes is really what you're looking for. You want it to be as short as possible while saying the things that you need to say to get people interested in what you're showing. Now keep in mind that you could have multiple videos, or you can have a video that leads somebody into learning more about your company. So when you put together a video on your company or on your product or service, it doesn't need to say everything. You might want to just focus on one big thing. And you can really hit that where somebody will be like, okay, well, I want to learn more. Maybe they watch another video. Now they're choosing to watch that video so you can explain more. Or maybe you're leading them to a page that will explain more about what you're talking about. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about lighting first. A lot of people that go to make a video might think, oh, that lighting's not important. Let's just film wherever we are. The problem is most places where you are, the lighting is going to be from directly above. That's going to put shadows down on your face, and that's not a good look. This is what this video would look like without lighting. You do have some backlight from the window outside. Say you're somewhere where you can't bring in lighting, there's no outlets, or maybe they're too far away. You want to then use your natural lighting to your benefit. So this light that's behind me, I would be shooting so that that is behind the camera and use that to light me instead. The best lighting setup you can have is with 3 lights. You might not be able to do that, and that's okay. The most important one is going to be your key light, your main light. That's what I have set up over here. And what that's doing is just generally lighting up the scene. I like to have that light off to one side so that it lights up part of my face, because then that gives you more of a dimensioned look. If you have it right in front, you're kind of washed out. It won't look as good. To balance out that light is this shadow light or this fill light. And what that does is if I just had this light, you might have a ton of shadow over here. And unless you're trying to be dramatic, that's not the best look. So this one will be a much lower level of light, but then that will fill in some of your shadows. It's fill light. I still like this light to be a lot lower because then you'll have the dimension on your face. You'll have the brighter side and the darker side. I think that looks a lot nicer. The last light that you'll have is the backlight. I am using the window as a backlight, and what that does is it throws a little bit of light on the back of you and it pops you off the background. So again, we're talking about adding in that dimension. A lot of what you're doing with the lights is trying to make it feel like there's as much dimension as possible so that it doesn't feel like you're just sitting on a wall. With the front 2 lights, you definitely want to make sure that you have some sort of filter over them. With the backlight, it's not as important. It's nice to have, but if you don't have any filter, it's just pure sunlight coming in, that's okay too. Okay, now we're going to talk about where to point the camera. So a lot of people will set up right in the middle of the camera. That can be fine with certain types of videos. If you are doing a video where you are looking to the camera and you're having that discussion, you go ahead, be right in the middle. That's perfectly fine. With any other type of video, what you want to do is you're following the rule of thirds. So you cut the video into a third, both top and bottom, and you want to put your eye line right where two of the thirds meet up. That could be on either side. And that's going to give you the best feel for your video. It's going to feel much more filmic and much more professional. The other thing that's important to think about is where you put the interviewer, and that's going to then change where the person is looking. You always want the person to look towards the middle of the frame. So if you're looking towards the middle of the frame, this feels very natural. If you have the person on the other side of the frame and you're looking this way, you're looking off of camera, and that's going to make people feel really awkward. Again, just like having bad audio, people might not know why it's awkward, but it's going to feel awkward. Where you want the interviewer to be, you want the camera to almost be an over-the-shoulder look to the interviewer. So you want them to be very close to the camera. Again, if you have the interview over here and the camera's over there, this feels very awkward too. You don't know where they're talking to. They're talking very far away. Even though you're not talking directly in the camera, it still feels like this is more of a conversation than this does. So make sure right next to the camera, and then you're going to have the person looking in the middle of the frame. For audio, this is going to depend on your type of audio. If it's on-camera audio, you just want the mic pointed right at the person's face. Clip on, you want it pointed up. You actually want it to point slightly away, so it's going past the mouth rather than right at the bottom of the mouth. And then with a shotgun mic, some people might set it up and then have it point right at the person's mouth. But what you actually want to do if you're coming from above is to go right past and hit the person in the chest. What this does is it takes out a lot of, if the person is going to make a lot of T noises or S noises, you might have little clips in the audio, and that's going to get rid of a lot of those. So that's a helpful little tip. The other thing that you want to do with the shotgun mic is you're going to get a better, warmer feel the closer the mic is to the person. So you want to get the mic as close to the person as possible, but be just out of frame. You'll be surprised. You could get the mic like that far away from somebody's mouth if it's above them, and you'll think, oh, there's no way that that's not in the shot, but it is. It isn't in the shot. Now we're going to go over the settings for the camera. Depending on the type of camera that you're using, you might not be messing with a lot of these settings, but you probably want to. So even if you are using a phone, you can download some higher quality camera apps to be able to do some of these things. First off is the aperture. So that might not mean anything to you, but basically the aperture does two things. One, it is going to change the amount of blurriness you get in the background. And two, it's going to make the picture brighter or darker. The lower the number, the brighter the picture is going to be, the more blurred out the image is going to be. So the lower it is, the more filmic look it's going to be, because the blurred out background look is going to look a lot more filmic. ISO goes hand in hand with aperture to figure out how dark or light your footage is. Obviously, you're trying to get like right in the middle, so you use these two tools to get there. So basically, the ISO is going to be your general bright range. The lower or higher you can do the number is going to depend on how much light you have in the scene. So if you're outside and it's bright, you can get that way low and to get the look that you want. But if you're inside and you only have a little light, you might have to pump that up really high to make it look bright enough. It's nice to be able to pump it higher to get the look that you want, but the higher you go, also the more noise there is. Once you pick your ISO, which is kind of the bracket of how bright it is, then you use the aperture to get the exact brightness that you want. The shutter speed, a lot of times you won't be able to mess with this. What you want your shutter speed to be at, if you can mess with it, is about double what your frames per second is. So if you're at 24, you're probably going to have it set at 50, and you want it to stay at 50, because that really affects how your image looks. If you put it up to 200, that's going to look more like Saving Private Ryan, where it's like super crisp and edgy, and it's not going to give you the look that you're looking for. So the last thing to talk about is the color balance, and that is basically what color white is. Obviously, you want that to be white, but that's going to change depending on what kind of light you have. So outside, the light's different than an incandescent bulb, is different than a CFL bulb, is different than shade, is everything slightly different. And the white balance goes by cool and warm. So one side is super cool, one side is really warm. You're trying to find that midpoint. Luckily, most cameras have presets. So if you are outside and it's sunny, you could set it to sunny, you're going to get great color. If you're inside and you're using incandescent light, you'll set it to that, you're going to get great color. One thing you don't want to do is set it to auto, because it might look really good when you start filming, but maybe it gets super sunny out and that shoots light into the room you're in. That's a different color than the light you're using inside, and then now all of a sudden your video looks really warm and it doesn't look very good. So keep to those defaults and you'll get a really nice color. Every piece of software is going to work a little different with editing, so there are much better tutorials out there to teach you how to edit exactly how you want to. All I will say is, depending on the type of video, this type of video, it's informal, we're talking to each other, so I can do these fast cuts. If I was doing an interview style, that fast cut wouldn't look really good. I like to use two cameras. If you can't, what you want to do is push way in. So when you go from one topic to the next, instead of just a straight cut, you'll cut, but then you'll zoom in and remember to keep their eyes on the third lines and do a slight transition. And that will look a lot nicer. You're hopefully seeing it right now, so you'll get the idea of what that looks like. You can do a zoom without a transition. Depending on the type of video, you might prefer one or the other. You might just like one style more than the other. I like adding the transition in there. I think that it works a little nicer. It is nice, though, to have two cameras. Not only does it make it a lot easier to edit, but it allows you to look more professional. If you have one camera set up like this, where you have all this nice room, then maybe you have a second camera that zooms more in and it gives more of a full face look, like a filmic look, that's going to look really nice. So you can play around with something like that. Another way to hide a transition, and this helps when editing something together, is if you throw up a picture of what you're talking about, or of another video of what you're talking about, or your software or something like that. Then when you cut, that person won't see that. And you can actually use that when, right now I'm kind of pausing and stuff like that. So if I had an image up, I can actually cut out all those pauses and put it all together, and it would sound like a much better statement. You do want to be careful, though, that it still sounds natural. Sometimes a slight break or pause in your thought or an will sound very natural, and when you take it out, it won't sound as good. And when you put all those pieces together, you always, anytime you have a cut, even if you're not going to transition on the visual, you want to have a small transition on the audio. Even if it's completely silent on both sides, sometimes there is a problem with digital audio that if you have two pieces put next to each other and they don't blend into each other, you might get a little pop. So it'll just be a little when you go to the next part. When you go to export your video, you can export it in different formats for different reasons. But generally, when you're exporting for the web, you're going to do it at 8.264. You don't need to know what that is. That's just the format that's being most used on the web right now. And what that does is that it condenses your size by a ton, but still keeps the quality. At the beginning of this, I talked about not knowing how to export. So we were exporting as QuickTime, as MPEG, as all these different things. And we would have like a 4-minute video that is somehow 120 gigs. And that's not going to work. So, and sometimes it would export it in like 12 seconds, and it somehow created 120 gigs. Don't know how it happened. But H.264 is your friend. There's a lot of editing tools that will allow you to pick, like, this is going to YouTube, or this is going to Vimeo, or this is going to go to a cell phone. And then you can just pick that, and it will set everything exactly how you want it to be. No matter what you pick, you can then hopefully change your megabytes per second. And that is where the quality comes in. Right now, anywhere from 5 to 12 is pretty good. I started at 3, but that was years and years ago when YouTube was a little different. So 5 is going to get the minimum that you want. I do 10 to 12. When you're putting it up onto YouTube, it's going to make it into the fastest file that works on any website. So you don't have to worry about that. You really want to give it the highest quality you can. So 10 to 12 is a really good number to use. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of an overview on all of this. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you have, anything that I didn't cover. And tomorrow we are going to be talking about some last tips and tricks that you can use to look a little nicer than some other videos that are out there. And I'm going to have a little offer for you that hopefully you will like. So I will see you tomorrow for our final lesson.